I'm Gail DePriest, and I have the pleasure this morning of being with Dean Wendy York of Clemson University College of Business. And Dean York, it's a pleasure to sit down with you and have the chance to learn a little bit more about you. You've been at Clemson now, I guess, a year?
Not quite.
Not quite a year.
9 months, yeah.
About 9 months. So the first woman dean of the College of Business, and we're just thrilled that you're here. But it's a great chance today just to learn a little bit more about you. And I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is to tell me more about your current role and how you came to be in that position.
Well, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm in my current role because Clemson started talking to me and wouldn't go away.
Wow.
They called me and said, we're doing a dean's search, and I was at Stanford Graduate School of Business, so pretty happy. They were very good to me, taking very good care of me. I wasn't looking to leave, and I had 3 daughters about to go into college and get tuition assistance from Stanford, so I really wasn't looking to leave. And Clemson said, you have to just kind of take a look and see what we've got here. We have more than just a football team. And I said, okay, but I'm really not looking. And they just kept coming back. And finally I said, y'all know I don't have a PhD, right? And they said, yeah. The president said, we've got a lot of PhDs. That's not what we need for the College of Business.
Interesting.
So I started taking a look, and I was just so impressed with everything that's going on and just the depth and the breadth of things. It's so much more than just football. And I said, you guys are like the best kept secret in the country.
Wow.
And then I came down and interviewed and fell in love. And so then I actually really wanted the job and hoped I got it.
Can you tell me some of the things that really impressed you more specifically?
Well, there really is something to this Clemson family and this thing about something in the air. I think you guys really do, put magic fairy powder in the air. And I came down and was just overwhelmed at the passion and the loyalty and the pride in the Clemson family. And I was also really deeply moved at how quickly they were willing to let me be part of that. And once my position was announced, I had probably over 100 emails from people I didn't know from the Clemson family welcoming me. And they all said things like, welcome to the Clemson family, #TigerFamily, and it was a repeating pattern. I went, there really is something to this Clemson family. And people have just been so gracious and so welcoming to me and, providing me a place to live when I didn't have anything and endorsing me. I mean, Joe Irwin printed on LinkedIn this thing that looked like a quarter-page ad welcoming me, and he didn't know me from Adam, which was lovely of him. And everybody has just been so welcoming. And the first couple months I was here, I really felt like I had imposter syndrome, like I really hadn't put the skin in the game to earn being part of this family yet. And now I still don't think I've earned it, but I still really enjoy it and feel part of that family. And it's a very important part of the Clemson experience. And in addition to the intelligence and the creativity and the entrepreneurship I find in the students and the faculty and the staff and the whole community around it, there's just something really special about Clemson.
That's amazing. Listening to you talk about that, I know that they came to you and they really were working diligently to get you to come here. Tell me about your background, because I know it's varied and it's interesting and it's not just academia.
No, it's not. I've only been in an academic administrative position for about 6.5 years. Prior to that, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've started or turned around at least 4 companies. I've been a venture capitalist. I've been an angel investor. I've worked for large companies like Bank of America and Bechtel Power Corp. I've worked for nonprofits. I did 3 years intensely volunteering in our local school because of my daughters. So I really have a very varied background. I've been a CEO of multiple companies of different sizes, and I think that one of the things that they were really looking for was some of that entrepreneurial spirit, some of that ability to innovate. And also I had a very significant experience at the Graduate School of Business where I was asked by that dean to really lead a major reorganization and streamline some of the operations of the staff side and create from scratch a faculty quantitative research facility, which we did, which is really a competitive advantage for the Graduate School of Business in recruiting and retaining faculty. I also did a year and a half as managing director of programs and executive education at the School of Business, which was really, really important and powerful experience. And it's kind of one of those things in my portfolio that I plan to implement at Clemson as well.
You've had an amazing career. What's your inspiration? What would you say is kind of your driving force, your thread of interest all the way through?
It hasn't been a common thread, because if you look at all of the places I've worked, they almost have nothing in common. I think I'm very motivated by a challenge, and I look for the next growth opportunity. And I love to use the word pivot, because I think I'm very good at pivoting. And by pivoting, I mean that ability to switch directions or seek a new path. And part of that, I could say, because I'm probably pretty brave, and the other part of it is I'm probably so arrogant it doesn't occur to me I could fail. So I really view those as challenges and opportunities, and I really don't spend a lot of time worrying about what happens if. I mean, we'll deal with it when we get there, but more often I'm just moving onward, and more often than not it turns out pretty well, and we just keep growing.
Amazing. I know that you have 3 daughters.
4.
4 daughters.
I have 4 daughters.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. I did know. Okay.
Yeah.
You have 4 daughters. How did you do it? I know there will be a lot of young podcast listeners who will want to know, how do you accomplish all these things but balance and have a great family?
I have a daughter who will be 27 this September, and I have a set of triplets that turn 19 the 3rd week of this May. You just do it. They're, in addition to my mom, they're the most important people in my life. Doing 3 at once is a bit much, even for me. There's a reason it doesn't occur in nature very often. I wouldn't give any of them back. Well, on any one particular day, I'd probably give one of them back, but the next day it'd be a different one. So I just love them. And one thing I found about having kind of this batch processing of 3 at once is they're really individuals, and you don't get any credit for what they accomplish. You just hope you don't mess it up.
Yeah.
And so I have 4 daughters. They're all very different, except they're all very bright. They're all really good people. They're all beautiful. They're all talented in just a range of ways. I don't know where they got some of these talents from, not from me. And it's my job just to communicate to them what I would to any young women, and which I do often to young women, and that is you can do anything that you want to, and you need to. And you need to believe in yourself, and you need to hold others up as you do it.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm curious to know, what do you love most about your current role?
Well, I have an amazing job. I can't believe I get paid to do some of the stuff that I do. It's really, really fun to be dean. It really is. That aside, from a personal friend, I think the thing that I really love the most, and I am very mindful of being very responsible about, is that I can make a difference in this role. There's so much opportunity, and I see where we can go, and there's so many great people and resources that I think have been really wanting to know where that direction is, and and many of them were going in those directions. I think they just needed the affirmation that this is where we're going. And so it does feel like I can make a difference. And that's kind of how I define if I'm going to take an opportunity, is if I can make a difference. Because I can't be someplace that wants to stay status quo.
And as far as biggest challenge in this role, just curious.
Biggest challenge is not being able to move as fast as I want to.
Sure. Sure. Well, thank you for that segue, because I did want to ask you, if you were to imagine that it's 5 years into the future and the College of Business has evolved as you hope, tell me what would be happening, how it might have changed, and maybe how it might have stayed the same.
5 years from now, we will be recognized on a national level for the greatness and creativity and entrepreneurship that is there and can be developed. And the thing that will have changed is, in addition to the rest of the nation knowing about that, we will all know that ourselves, and we'll be playing at a very high level. What will stay the same is that sense of Clemson family and our integrity and the sense of value in community and moving the whole community forward as opposed to just individually. That is there, and that needs to stay, because as I talk to students and when I deliver speeches, there is strength in diversity. And the broader the range of skills and perspectives on any team, the stronger it is. And so we will have not only a great and varied portfolio of things that we are academically excellent in, we will have a great and varied group of people participating in that, both students, faculty, and staff, and alumni.
When you think, Dean York, about the graduate school and in particular the MBA, what are your hopes for the MBA?
The MBA program is really critical to the College of Business because having a credible, efficient, well-respected MBA that is available to a wide range of people's schedules is really critical to our standing as a College of Business. So an MBA program, a well-regarded one, a well-run, is absolutely critical.
I'd like to ask you, in your career, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
In my career? I think it would go back to that issue of being able to make a change and make a difference. And I think as I look back at my whole career, more than one particular situation or one particular opportunity, it's the commonality of the opportunities of being brave enough to take that opportunity and then really changing something, hopefully for the better, and making a difference in that way. And that is why there's a common thread through the number of things I've done, as opposed to the fact that they're in many different industries and many different size companies, for-profit and non-profit. It was that opportunity to make a difference and also to learn and grow, keep me growing.
I loved what you said about the ability to pivot. And in our innovation and creativity class, we try to teach students to understand that you want to look for multiple answers. You want to then sometimes see that thing that you didn't even expect and maybe realize maybe that's something you should be looking at. So do you feel like as part of your innovation, part of your creative process, you've been able to be a good solutions finder? It certainly sounds like it.
Oh, yeah. My mother said I'd been solving other people's problems from the time I was little, including coaching my brother on what color or what kind of ice cream he should. Jim, you get chocolate every time. You should do something different. She said, maybe he likes chocolate. Yeah, I see solutions, particularly operational solutions. I can see procedures in my head that will improve a process. So I think I do that, and it's just kind of a natural sense of saying, okay, strategically, what are we trying to accomplish? What's getting in our way? Where can we make in some cases, easy fixes, in other cases, much more difficult fixes to move the whole community forward or the whole issue forward or whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. I think I kind of just naturally think about that.
Sure.
I think that way about things, and then when you couple that with, not being afraid to or not considering that I might actually mess it up more, not worrying a lot about that, I think that's given me the ability to kind of work through a lot of different things and have success.
What did you study early on in your life? What did you study undergraduate, and what were your dreams then? What did you hope to be?
My undergraduate was Stanford University. I ended up getting an undergraduate degree in international relations with honors. That was as close as I could get to international business, because they didn't have the Stanford undergraduate doesn't have a business major. I picked international because I'm fascinated with international. My father had put me on my first international trip when I was 14. I was with a student group. He didn't just throw me on a plane to Europe by myself. And I learned really early on from that experience that people are different in different places, but there's a lot of commonality. And it really taught me to be respectful of the ways that people do things, and yet understanding very early on that the smile is the universal language, and also taught me to be very proud of my country without having to be defensive of it. And I think that was probably the early patterning on being able to pivot and embrace new situations and not be frightened by them and look for the good in them. So I think that was early. So that's what I studied at Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could you tell me perhaps a childhood challenge that you might have overcome?
I had a wonderful childhood. I had great parents, and I had two brothers, and we were lower middle class, but I didn't know it. didn't think we were missing anything. My parents spent a lot of time with us. We were their priority. My dad had never finished college, much less gone to Europe when he sent me the first time, because he thought it was important that I have that, and I'm sure that was very expensive. And Stanford was expensive, but they paid a third, and I worked a third, and Stanford gave me scholarship for a third, and we made it through.
Nice.
So, I had a very demanding father, so every day was a challenge. But at the same time, he told me he never hesitated because I was a girl. I was the oldest. I was the only girl. But he never treated me any differently. He was very protective, especially when I started dating. But he never treated me any different. He expected me to be able to achieve, and he fought for me to have opportunities for that. And at the same time, on the weekend, he'd say, "I'm building a brick planter box. Will you help me?" And I go, "Yeah." I guess he thought I needed to know how to build a brick planter box, which I can still do to this day.
Good for you. Absolutely. Yes.
You never know when that's going to come in handy. I actually love construction, too, which is weird. But when I got into Stanford, one of the male colleagues that he worked with said, "Well, that's really great, but you're not going to send her, are you? Aren't you going to wait for your son?" And he said, "No, I'm sending her to Stanford because I want her to keep me in the standard to which she's become accustomed." But it wasn't that long ago when the concept was, why would you spend all that money to send a daughter to a college?
You're right.
And that seems bizarre to me to say that, but that's how recent that is. And that was never an issue with him. And yet I had a very loving and supportive mom who had all of the constants and the family, the family love and the unconditional love that's so important for you, having a strong sense of self, which is also necessary for you to be able to take risks.
Absolutely.
So I had that stability from her with a father championing me and fighting for me. It was a pretty great combination for me.
That is a great combination. So that served you well throughout your entire career and your adult life. Have there been challenges in your later life or in your life in general that you've had to overcome that you think maybe have shaped who you are?
Yeah, how personal do you want to get? Yeah, of course. There's always career challenges where things don't go right or whatever. Those you move on from. I lost my brother way too early. That was hard. One of my brothers. It's just, you just keep going. What I say to my girls is, you just keep moving forward and, put your big girl shoes on, put your pity in your purse, and move on. And you have to do that with compassion. One of the problems I have is that I feel things very deeply. I'm I really empathize, and I am not very good about keeping my heart off my sleeve. And I don't have a business persona face I put on and become, steel magnolia So when I feel emotionally moved, it registers with me, and I'm really not. I probably should not play professional poker. So I was delivering I delivered a speech to the graduating class this last May of the students that were graduating with honors and awards, and this whole auditorium was filled up with them, and they'd asked me to speak on leadership and to give them some words of advice as they graduated. And I was telling them that I was just so happy to be there, and I was telling the parents, I totally get it. I get what you're sitting there. You can't believe your child is graduating. That wasn't that long ago. And students, I know, you feel like you just got here. And I said, I know, because I'm a mom who just deposited her last 3 children in college, and I know how it's not going to be that long before I'm going to be sitting where you are, and I just completely choked. I looked up, and it just suddenly became way too real that in, now 3 more years, my 3 daughters will be graduating from colleges, and it just hit me. I wasn't expecting it, and I just kind of went, and I'm sure they thought I just, I'd swallowed a fur ball or something, and I'm like sitting there trying to get myself emotionally together, because when I get choked up, I can't talk, which is so annoying, and I'm swallowing hard, and I'm like, pull it together, pull it together. And they're all sitting there like, I don't know if she's having a problem. And I pulled it back and I said, I'm sorry, I just flashed forwarded 3 years and saw you, my daughters, there in the audience, and me sitting there with you moms. And anyway, so let me get back to the lecture I was going to give you.
They're loving that you're human, I'm sure, and
I'm way
appreciating.
too human.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious to know, we talked about this a little bit already, but since our podcast is the business of innovation, how creative do you consider yourself to be? We sort of touched on that already, but it sounds like you're there.
I'm pretty creative.
Pretty creative.
Yeah, on the personal side, I do a lot of creative stuff, everything from photography to a lot of handwork to scrapbooking to embroidering to sewing to quilting. I've always done that kind of thing. I'm a really good cook, although not so much recently for myself and my cat.
Yeah.
Table of one, please. But I am a creative person. And I don't sit there and think of it as being creative because I'm always thinking of what's the solution to this.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty much willing to go out of the lanes. I probably should bowl with the bumpers up, but I don't do life that way.
Another word that kind of comes to mind as we're talking is resourceful too. It sounds like you might have come from a resourceful, creative family, even where you were looking at other ways to do things and be, and I kind of hear that as well.
Yeah, I think that's partially because we didn't have a lot of money, so you figure things out. We didn't throw money at problems. We worked our way through them. I also come from a long line of pioneer stock. My family has been in Utah for several hundred years. We still maintain a family piece of property right in downtown Salt Lake that's been in my family since 1910. My pioneer relatives were there. My grandfather took the picture. He was one of the photographers that took the picture of the driving the Golden Spike. So we kind of got that pioneer spirit that just says, just get it done.
Yes.
and be thankful for what you have and happy you made it across the prairie.
You've lived another day.
We've kind of given up on the covered wagons, although I think I drove probably the next generation of covered wagon to high school, but
I think I did too.
Yeah.
So innovation, what does it mean to you?
It means to improve and create, to move things to the next step. It doesn't mean you have to start from scratch. It doesn't mean you need to keep elevating. It just, you're bringing people up, you're bringing the process up, you're bringing the possibilities up. That's why we innovate, is to create something bigger or better or newer than what we have, with mindful respect to what has already been done.
And based on what you've shared with me already, my next question is, do you consider yourself to be a disruptor? I'm kind of thinking I know the answer to that.
No.
No, not a disruptor.
No, I'm a catalyst.
A catalyst. Okay.
I'm
Talk
not-
more about that.
Well, I totally appreciate the term disruptor, and I appreciate that people want to and are disruptors, but I'm not a disruptor. I'm a catalyst. I can innovate while facilitating. My job has always been to not go in and blow things up. It's to go in and either create a new way of doing something, facilitate a new way, help others see that way. And so maybe I'm being too narrow on disruption, but to me, I think a better word for me is a facilitator, is a catalyst. In some, I dare to use sometimes the word visionary in terms of I can see something, but I can't get there by myself. My job is to point where we can go and give my ideas of how we can go there, and then ask other people to go with me and create a safe enough environment that they are brave enough to follow me and go with me.
So a little more relational, I heard in there.
I'm very relational.
Okay.
I think culture is incredibly important. I spend a lot of time creating culture. As strategic as I am, I would say probably I'm even stronger at creating culture, because I think at Stanford we used to say culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes.
I'm sure they say that in a lot of places.
And it does.
I really believe that.
Yes.
And I have witnessed and created cultures that absolutely could create change and innovation that never would have been there before.
Can you talk more about that? That when you think of culture and you think of your current role, do you mind to elaborate a little bit more on
Sure.
what you'd love to see happen, or just your vision right now about that?
Yeah, I'm often asked to speak on leadership particularly to the students. And I was interviewed for something and said, what are the life lessons out of your career that you would hope that your daughters would get? So I spent a lot of time preparing for that interview and really boiling it down. And this was the gist of that speech that I gave to those honor students. And I said, when I think about leadership, I'm going to tell you guys 3 easy steps to be a leader, and you won't even need to write this down. You'll be able to remember this. I said, be authentic, be brave, be inclusive. And that, to me, is how I try to be. I'm authentic, which also includes being transparent and being truthful and being communicative. But that's the problem with this, I can't help but wear my heart on my sleeve, say what I'm thinking, and love people. That's just the way I do it. And being brave, we've talked about, and I gave them some examples of that. And brave doesn't mean taking unnecessary risks, but it means being capable of doing the right thing even when it's hard. And it means thinking about what's right for other people, not just yourself. And then inclusive, I really feel very strongly about too. And inclusivity means making an environment where everybody feels safe and everybody feels valued. Because if I'm willing to go out and be authentic myself, I'm kind of putting my whole self out there.
Yes.
I'm not protecting myself. And what that signals to other people is that they're going to be okay doing that too.
Yes, it does. Vulnerability.
And when people trust and they feel comfortable and supported, they can be better than they ever knew they can.
Absolutely.
And that is what creates a high-performance team.
I agree completely. The trust is foundation, but the vulnerability has to come when you do share. And you're human, just like you mentioned earlier, but you're able to say, I don't have all the answers, and so forth.
Trust is also, excuse me for interrupting, but trust is really important for people to take risks to try to innovate. Because if you have an environment that penalizes bad outcomes, people won't innovate. So I want to create an environment where I want people to take thoughtful risk, and if it doesn't work, which it won't always, there's not a penalty. In fact, I prefer to create an environment where there's a penalty for not pushing yourself and not trying to be the best you can. And I don't want people to make the same mistake over and over again. We, can do some learning there, but that you have to have trust for people to be willing to innovate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Something you really like about yourself?
I think how transparent I am.
Okay. Does it ever get you in trouble?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I had to ask that question.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's not cool to cry when you're supposed to be delivering a speech. I use my sense of humor a lot. I have found that to be a very effective tool, and also humor diffuses tension. Most of the time I try to make fun of myself, but I have been told that my sense of humor can sometimes be so dry that people don't get it and they think I'm being critical, which I'm really not. So I have to watch that. My sense of humor gets me in trouble sometimes, but I wouldn't trade it, and I wouldn't be boring for the world. So I guess that's a risk.
Yeah. And so you've been traveling a lot for Clemson.
Yeah.
You've been meeting so many of the alums, and you've been on the road. How's that been?
It's been fabulous. I spent the first semester on the road most of the time. Really went on this listening, learning tour with our alums, with corporate partnerships, with businesses in the area, because I really needed to hear from them what our students need to have to be business ready when they graduate.
Sure.
There's incredible feedback from them, incredible passion. I mean, if I wasn't in love with Clemson already, boy, by the time you spend time with a lot of alums, it's just really very impactful and something that feels very special to belong to. Even though I'm adopted in, I'll take it.
Sure.
So that was really very important input into coming up with the vision for the college. So I took what I heard from the road, came back in, and then looked internally, did a large survey with every faculty and staff member in the College of Business could participate in. I did an external operational review, brought in some seasoned, tenured faculty members that had academic administrative experience, had them give me their perspective. I have a senior advisory board that's made up of our alum that I meet with and take strategic direction from, and put all those things together to really come up with what I believe and hope is a very strategic, business relevant course of study that has really informed the vision for where we're going. I presented that to our Board of Trustees at the end of April. I got pretty good feedback on that, and I guess it wasn't too bad because they didn't fire me. I'm still here.
That's good.
Yeah, I was happy about that.
So, something you don't like about yourself?
How transparent I am. Gets me in trouble.
I think I saw that coming. If you had a most proud personal moment?
I don't think it's one moment. I think it's the distillation of how proud I am of my daughters with what they are, who they are.
Who they are, yeah.
You know they're going to grow up, and I don't take any credit for it, but it's a pretty proud day when I can say I'm really impressed with what they are accomplishing, which is this wide range of things, and I love them, but I really like my girls.
Yeah.
They are people that I like and that other people like and respect.
Good
And
people.
that's kind of the best of all worlds. And then wrap my mama in there.
I was going to say, and you
good.
still have your mom,
Oh
too.
my
That's
gosh.
so wonderful.
She's so awesome.
Where is she?
She's in Salt Lake. She lives on that family farm, which
Oh,
is right
wow.
downtown. She just built a brand new 3,000 square foot farmhouse that they told her she probably shouldn't do because she's too old. And my mother's very polite, but you can imagine what her mind was thinking when they told her that she was too old. You don't tell women in my family what they can't do because they will turn around and just do it out of spite.
Anyway.
And so she just built this beautiful house. I just saw her a week ago. She just had her
Wonderful.
81st birthday, and I popped in to surprise her. And I love being with her. She's my rock. She's the reason I can stand through any storm.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. What are you curious about now? What are you reading, or what are you looking at now?
Oh, I'm doing all sorts of things. I always have a couple of books going. Right now, I'm reading Indigo Girl, which is this really amazing. It's mostly fact. It's written in a fictionalized story, but it's based on a true person about South Carolina in the late 1700s, when it was even before really the colonies had gotten very much underway, and it was still part of the British Empire, and people were leaving the West Indies and come here and were setting up plantations, and the whole history of that time. And this young woman is left to be in charge of the family plantation because the father goes off, the son is being trained in England, and the mother has these constant fevers and headaches and things. And the 16 or 17-year-old girl stands up to introduce indigo into South Carolina and run this family plantation and save the family farm in the absence of her father. And it's this very interesting juxtaposition of what women were not allowed to do, what their positions couldn't. It drew some very interesting parallels between, she had great empathy for what they were called then Negro slaves, and she understood their sense of feeling captive in the same way that she felt very captive. And so I'm into that, and it's very interesting. I'm almost thinking about using it as the basis of probably creating a creative inquiry around the ideas of leadership, and especially those 3 items that I outlined, and maybe using this book as part of that, and then weaving in the South Carolina history. So that's really interesting. It's a very good book. Then I'm supposed to be making my way through this 3-inch tome by Winston Churchill on the history of English-speaking peoples, because we have our Oxford program coming up in July, and I'm going over to visit that and then also deliver a lecture in that.
That's a wonderful program.
Yeah. So I'll be I'm delivering a lecture for one afternoon, and they asked me for a title. Which I haven't written it yet. So I came up with the title, and I said, well, how does this work for you? And I said, Dare to be Great, How to Be a Leader. And so that I will weave in these messages about, because I really truly believe that leadership is a choice, not a title. And I want our students to understand that at all levels. I've always treated my staff and my employees in an organization, there is leadership at every level. Don't just think the person at the top is the only leader. You have to be a leader where you are. And just kind of talk to the students in ways to really kind of make them think about their own power to be leaders where they are.
Beautiful. I love that. And you'll have so much fun at the Oxford program. I've taught in that for 3 years, so I'm not going this summer, but they'll love having you show up. And
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be there, and my older
Yes.
daughter's going to come and join me at the end, and then I'm going to
Nice.
take her to Ireland, and we're going to see if we can find some entrepreneurial opportunities for your MBA students to have some overseas
great.
experience. I was there about 3 years ago, and it's an extremely entrepreneurial, it's an amazing country.
It
wonderful.
has been,
It's
yes.
a wonderful country.
Yes, it has
Amazing
been.
history. So, yeah.
Interesting.
I'm going to check that out for us while we're there.
I like that. What is the best advice you've ever received?
The first company I ever started, I remember with some trepidation telling my grandfather, both my grandparents were stockbrokers, and he also started a bank, so they did a much more traditional type of route. And I remember sitting there saying to him, I'd already told my mom, but I said, Grandpa, I'm going to start a company. I wasn't sure exactly how he'd feel about that. He was a very strong and quiet man, but very proper. And he just looked up at me and he said, don't let the butterflies get you. And by that he meant it's scary. When you start something new, it's scary. Don't let the butterflies in your stomach get you. Be brave and keep
Right.
going.
Interesting. So he supported you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's really cool. How do you want to be remembered?
I just think that she cared.
I remember reading that a while back, that your favorite book was God's Hotel, and it was one of the most fascinating books I've ever read.
Isn't it amazing?
It's just amazing, and I think that is that just told me a lot about the person that you were, just the complexity of it, but the humanity of it, and it was just a wonderful read.
Yeah, for people who haven't read it, it's basically the story of patterning healthcare for people around the old model that was done in the monastic age, where nuns would take people in and nurse them back to health. But the concept of healing people meant more than just their body. It meant their spirit and their soul and their willingness to live and their belief that they could go on. And we've lost that in a lot of ways. We've lost that in workplaces that want you to keep your personal life separate. We've lost that in hospitals that are more concerned about getting you in and patching you out. We've lost that in institutions that were closed, that are not available to take care of people that have mental issues. Because as I tell everybody I work with, you bring your whole person to work, and that includes anything that's happening in your family, anything that's scaring you, anything that's stressing you. And yes, you have a job to do, but that's part of who you are as a person, and that's part of one of the reasons that I want a transparent workplace, because people don't always do well at compartmentalizing. And although we have a job to get done and people have to function in that, there still is room for us to take care of each other. And I find that people, when they're safe and treated as a whole person, are very loyal.
And more productive.
And more productive and more sustained and more fulfilled. And when you have teams like that, they'll walk up walls for you.
Yes, they will. I totally agree. I think that's an incredible place to stop. I can't thank you enough for coming and sharing today. I feel like I've learned so much about you.
Really
and
my pleasure.
We're so pleased to have you here. I just can't tell you.
Yeah, well,
how much we
I feel
are.
very blessed and very thrilled to be part of the Clemson family.
Great. Thank you, Dean York.
Thank you, Gail.